All right, guys, welcome back. Now it's time to create another endpoint for our authentication, and that's going to be one to refresh the token. If you remember, when the user logs in, they get two tokens, an access token and a refresh token. The access token expires after 30 minutes, and that's the token they use to authenticate each time they send a request to a different endpoint. So that expires after 30 minutes. Once that expires, they don't have to log back in. They can refresh their access token using the refresh token that they got when they logged in. And that refresh token doesn't expire. However, it does get invalidated when they log out. So let's go ahead and get started with that. So if you go to your auths.js file in your routes folder and just start creating a new endpoint. This one's actually going to be a put endpoint for the refresh token, because we are editing or updating data that already exists. Okay, once you have the normal boilerplate for the endpoint ready, go ahead and go into the function. We're going to get something from the body. We're going to get the refresh token. So the user has to send us the refresh token in order to refresh the access token. So we need to check if they sent us the refresh token. If they didn't, we'll just send an error response. We'll do a 401. Actually, you know what? Let's do a 400. Call that bad response, or I mean, a bad request. And the message will just be, there was a problem refreshing access token. Refresh token is required. Then they know exactly why it failed. Okay, so as long as they gave us the refresh token, we can verify that their token is valid. Say jot.verify will verify that the refresh token against the refresh token secret is. And again, this has a callback. So if it's successful, this error object should be null. Otherwise, there was an error. So we'll check that. If error, res status, and this will be a 403. That's forbidden. Tell them there was a problem refreshing your access token. Yeah, I think that's all we'll put. The status should tell them what they need to know. And then after that, that if block, we will we'll find their token. So we'll look for their token. This is assuming everything went well and we were able to verify them. So we'll find it using the trainer ID, which we have from the trainer object, which is returned when we decode the refresh token. Okay, so then with that, so if you notice what we've been doing whenever we run a SQL query or SQLize query is we usually use await, but here we're not going to use await, we're going to use something else. So we're going to let it run whenever it finishes is great, but it'll just run asynchronously, so in parallel with everything else that comes after it. But we can use this method called then on it, and what happens is when it's finished, it'll run whatever we put in this function. So we're going to say, so once it finishes, it's going to return a list or an array of tokens. So what we can do with that return list is we can search through the tokens and we can refresh the access token. So what we'll do is we'll do a for loop, we'll iterate over those tokens. We're going to compare the refresh token they sent in with the refresh token in each of these tokens that were returned. And those tokens are in the database themselves. If the comparison is successful, if they match, we're going to set our Boolean value of token found to true, and we're going to break out of the loop because once we found it, we don't need to keep iterating over the loop or over the tokens array. Then we'll check if token was found, because it's totally possible that this will go through every single token and not find it, in which case token found will be false. So if it's false, we're going to send a 403 error again. Let's just copy this one. Paste it there. And I just remembered we need to be returning this so that the code doesn't keep running. So make sure whenever you're doing res.status, you either return the status or you do return next. But in this case, we don't have a next property or a next param in here. So we don't need to do return next. Okay, so back down here, if token was not found, we're going to send them an error message. And then if it was found, we'll just continue on and we will generate a new access token for them. And for this, we're just going to pass in, we can pass in the trainer. Do we have the trainer? Yeah, we should have access to this trainer object up here. So we can just pass in trainer. And then the refresh token will stay the same. Remember, that doesn't expire. We don't have to send a status of 200 because it will automatically send that. That's the default. And then we're just going to send expires in seconds, and it's 1800. That's how many seconds are in 30 minutes. We'll send them the access token. Let's send them the refresh token, even though they already have it. And then the last thing is we're going to get that little expires at variable from the login endpoint. So if you go into the login endpoint, scroll down near the bottom, you'll find this expires at variable. Make sure to copy both of these lines. And then I'm just going to collapse this again. And then right after access token, looks like I didn't copy that. So right after the access token, we can paste that. And then here, we can return the expires at. And that'll make it so that it's the same response that they're used to seeing when they're logging in. It's just kind of uniform. Then, you know what? Let's go ahead and do something just to make this even more uniform. Let's create a function to get the expires at. So we'll say get expires at equals, and we'll put in, let's say, a number of minutes. We can, curly braces, paste that expires at code that we had, and then we can change this part to just return. And then with this 18, what is this, 180,000 or something like that, or it's almost 1.8 million. That's how many milliseconds, and that's what we want. So the number we're going to put in here is, we're going to do minutes times 60, which will give us the seconds, times 1,000, and that'll give us the milliseconds. And then we can take this function and just call it right here. So get, oh wow, get expires at 30 minutes. And here we'll just do 30 times 60, just to make it a little more obvious what we're doing, 30 minutes. And if you want to just take this call right here, and we will copy and paste that in our login function. So instead of doing this, let's delete that. And in the return object and the response object, we'll paste that. And again, 30 times 60, that's how many seconds are in 30 minutes. And you know, I'm going to go one step further and say expires at, or expires after, let's say expires in. So this is a constant. We're going to say expires in minutes, 30. That way we can just use this. And if we ever want to change when it expires, we just have to change it in that one spot. So what we'll do here, we'll delete this 30, and we'll do expires in minutes. You know, let's use a template string. I like those better. So do expires in minutes, and then anywhere else we're putting 30 minutes in. So like this right here, do that, that, and then also in our refresh function. So that was in our login function. Now we'll do the refresh function. And we can get rid of this because we're already doing that in the function. And there we go. That's a lot more standardized. Let's see, did we miss anything here? Just return. Should have returned that. And they should be good. So I don't know how long it's been for you. For me, it's definitely been 30 minutes since my refresh, since my access token was accessed. Unfortunately, I did not save it, but I think we'll be able to refresh it even if it hasn't expired. So if you want to go ahead and just open your terminal, make sure you're in the directory that your code is in, and then run that app.js. Go ahead and log in with the login endpoint. Okay, now we have this access token. I'm just gonna make note of like the last few things. So for me, it's ABRQ. You can copy it and paste it somewhere if you want. But I'm going to duplicate this, change this path to refresh token, change my body, make this refresh token, and then paste that refresh token. Make sure you paste the refresh token, not the access token. And then I'm going to hit that endpoint. Okay, so there's an error. Oh, okay. Cannot, so you'll see here, cannot post refresh token. That's because our refresh token endpoint is a put endpoint. So you can just come here in the drop down, change that to a put. And now we have, okay, so we have a new refresh token. We don't have a new access token. Something went wrong there. So let's go back into the code and we'll investigate what went wrong. So this is where we're generating the access token. It should have given us a new one, but it didn't. Okay, so I found my issue. Looks like I forgot to add an await on this generate access token. So that's important. If we don't add that, it's not actually going to give us the access token. It's going to give us what's called a promise. And a promise is just saying that, so a promise is kind of what we did up here, where we didn't add a wait to this. And so we're just letting it run in parallel. Once it gets to this line of code, it'll just keep running everything after it, even if this takes a long time. And that's the same with this function. So if we don't add a wait, it'll just get to this point and then keep going. An access token will be a promise, which in this JSON is just an empty object like that. So yeah, long story short, add a wait, save it. Let's run it again. If you refresh the token, there you go. You should see new token. Now it actually looks like that is the same exact token. But I think the way JOT works is that it will know when it's expired. It has some data encoded in here to know when it'll expire. And it could also be the fact that our token wasn't expired. If anybody knows more about JOT than me, you could definitely answer that in the comments. It'd be great. I'd greatly appreciate knowing more about that kind of stuff. Okay, so now we have the refresh token endpoint finished. So the last one we'll need is the login endpoint, and we'll do that in the next video.